Welcome to Redefining Real Estate. I'm Rylan.
And I'm Morgan. Expect a mix of education, humor, and authentic conversation as we explore all things real estate.
Let's jump into today's episode.
All right, guys, so we were looking into some market data, and it looks like over 15% of buyers have been terminating their contracts on average every month. And so what we found is that a lot of people are experiencing some sort of buyer's remorse when you're, in the option period, you're doing inspections. Maybe you see other options that are out there that you could potentially, move away from the current house you're under contract on to these other options. And so we wanted to talk about, how can you avoid that feeling of buyer's remorse, and how can you really define and figure out what is going to be the best option for you?
Yes, yeah. Jess and I were talking the other day when we were traveling back, and we were talking why are people backing out more often now than they were, 3 or 4 years ago? Obviously, houses haven't really changed a whole lot. The contracts process, that's all been relatively the same. Same with inspections. Nothing has really changed within the real estate game, I would say. But we're seeing more increased terminations. And not for crazy events, right? Just for certain repairs that may not be willing to be negotiated. And I think buyers are being a lot more selective with which houses they're, wanting. They could be under contract with one, but fully okay with 3 others, I think a couple years back, they were more we have to have this or else we're screwed pretty much.
Yeah, when I first started, that's exactly how it was. It was it's either this one that meets the bare minimum of what we need, or we may not be able to have a house.
Exactly, yeah. And now it's oh, this one doesn't check every single box, so let's just terminate and go to this other one that does, which is, in my opinion, it's kind of cool for buyers because they have so many options, but sometimes that many options can be negative for you just because you don't know which one to actually choose,
Right.
Yeah, so whenever I hear that stat, I really just think it kind of comes down to that being the main thing, is that buyers have so many more options right now, and they're not as desperate to get in somewhere, at least not as a whole,
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think something that I've also been seeing a lot more lately is, even especially with first-time home buyers, is they're gravitating towards this idea of, obviously I want move-in ready. I don't want to have to invest all this time and effort and money into fixing something up, even if it's just outdated, even if it's not broken, but it's just outdated.
Yeah.
They tend to not be as interested in those homes, even if it checks all the other boxes.
Yeah, they don't want a project. It's no one really wants to go and renovate a whole lot, because honestly, majority of the time, we're already at the top of their budget. With all the rising economy costs and everything, the cost to live has gone up. So I feel people have less cash just kind of laying around to put $10,000 into their kitchen. That doesn't really happen a whole lot. So if you see an older home at $250 and then a move-in ready home at $250, it's really hard to sit there and compare the two, especially with long-term investment, upfront investment, all of those things that go into making the right choice for them. It's hard, I feel for sure, now more than ever.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of the different, depending on what price range you're in, sometimes it can feel overly saturated.
Yeah.
In our market, I would say under 300, under 250, you have a lot larger buyer pool, just because it includes investors and also people who are looking to stay here long term. But as soon as you start getting above that price point, it makes it harder for an investment purchase to actually make sense numbers wise.
Right.
And so your buyer pool starts to go down and down. And then also thinking about it, if your home is in a price range where someone would typically need to sell their first home in order to buy this one, or have the cash to buy this one.
Right.
Then that can be more difficult too, because a lot of people are feeling well, I have this certain interest rate, so I don't want to sell because I'll never see that again. And I don't necessarily have the money saved up to just buy another house. So it just creates a lot less demand, and I think that's where a lot of people are getting confused as to what's going on in the market, because they're seeing price reductions, they're seeing houses sit on the market for longer.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a deal, quote unquote,
Yeah, there was a house sitting for 85 days, and a client of mine was hey, it's been on the market for 85 days? Let's they're gonna be pretty desperate for an offer, right? I'm like, dude, like, honestly, no. Like our averages on market has consistently gone up a few days, like every month this year, but it's at like 105, 106 right now.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to say that like after 100 days, you're kind of just getting started, you know, which is wild. 90 plus days, in my opinion, no matter what market, is long. But,
yeah, I mean that's 3 months of people looking at your house and you not getting an offer and
right. So it's always like, well, it hasn't sold for one like main reason, which would probably be price. But like even if you price something right in line, like it could sit for like 30 days, 60 days. But also too, if you prep the house properly, I doubt you ever get to that point either. So it's weird. Like the market isn't necessarily like leaning one way or the other, in my opinion, right now. It really just boils down to which buyers are serious and which sellers show up with a prepared house that's priced right. If they do all of the prep work to clean it, stage it if they need to, do the things that a homeowner should, and then price it right in line, like don't go crazy with it. We're seeing those move pretty fast.
Yes, and I think on that note, it's really about the details, right? Because again, we're not talking about if things are broken, fix them. It's also about the presentation of the home. And sellers historically over the last, I don't know, probably 4 to 5 years, haven't really had to do anything to sell their home. They just throw it on the market and can sell it. And I think a lot of people are still in that mindset, and they haven't fully transitioned to what it was like previously, which is, you know, you need to do paint touch-ups, you need to have landscaping done, you need to like power wash the exterior, like you need to do a lot of prep work in order to actually sell your home. And if you don't, then not only will you just not stand out among the competition, but you're just going to be waiting and potentially missing out on a good offer within a few days.
Yeah, and all that's boiling down to like you're sacrificing your net payout too.
Yes.
The longer you're there, the more desperate you may become. Therefore, you may take an offer that's 20K under what you wanted, you know, and it's hard to say that that's not your fault, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if you're designing a product, you're not going to go try to sell it when it's kind of messed up, you know, like you're going to want a very clean, put together product at a fair price. That way you can go out and market it effectively, you know? So I don't know why we wouldn't apply that same principle to selling your home, right? There's so many options out there, and buyers are seeing every single one of them. So why wouldn't you want to be like at the top of their list, you know?
Right, and that's something that I've, in listing appointments, brought up even more so recently than like any previous time.
Right.
You know, I like pull up the comps as we're going through them, and I'm like, hey, so right now this one is listed, these two are listed, like these are your biggest competition. So when you look at these homes, what are you seeing that your home doesn't have, or how do they? Let's talk about how they compare.
Right.
Like the last listing appointment I went on, there was a vacant house for sale in the neighborhood, and I stopped by it before I went to the listing appointment.
Smart.
Because obviously also pictures are going to look different than
of course,
you know, in person. So I go to look at this house, and in the pictures it looks very modern, very like bright and airy and open. And I go and look at the house, it's super like dim. It looks very outdated, like carpets are old.
Yeah.
You just tell like you're going like into a time capsule when you go back there. You step into the early 2000s as soon as you go in the house. And not saying that it was like dirty or cluttered or anything like that. It was just like very clearly outdated and very different than the pictures.
Yeah.
And so I conveyed that information to my clients when I went to the listing appointment, and I was like, you know, this is going to be your biggest competition. And even more so because we were going to price ours higher. So like if people are coming to look at yours, they will probably go look at this other one because it's cheaper.
Right.
And they'll want to compare the options.
Yeah.
And so I found that was helpful in our conversation to really show them and speak to what else is going on in the neighborhood. Whereas, like I said, in the past, I think it's been more like, hey, let's just get your house on the market and see what happens.
How fast did that house sell?
We went under contract within a week of being listed. I think it was like 4 days.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole point of all this, right? Is like, I'm assuming, I have no actual data, but I'm assuming that other house is probably still active, or at least has less contracts on it than yours does at the moment.
Right. When I saw it had been on the market for, I think, a few weeks already. So
yeah. So they're still kind of also just starting out, but still the point is that you took the time to do the prep work, or not the prep work, but you prepped for the appointment, conveyed that to your clients, and they heard you, and they did what they could, and they got an offer within a week. So that's the thing, like the buyer demand is there as long as the sellers are showing up the same way, in my opinion. Like as long as they're putting the same amount of effort as a buyer would be too in making a decision.
Right. Yeah, the market is what I would say is like balanced,
Which
right?
is weird. It's weird.
It's weird to say because people are like, oh, price reductions, like the market's crashing and I want to wait until the prices come down even more. And it's
Interest
like,
rates are through the roof, all those things.
yeah, all the things, but it's like there's still like barely enough inventory to keep up with the buyer demand. It's just the fact that not everyone is jumping to buy a house right now because of other things going on.
Right.
So, that's at least what we're seeing in Bryan-College Station. Can't speak to what's going on in the larger cities or whatever, but that is definitely what we're seeing here. And so I think for anyone who's thinking about making a move within the next several months or even within the next year, what advice would you give to someone in that position?
I'm always looking more into real estate as like a long-term thing. It's hard to do that when it's like your first home and you may not have a whole lot of cash to like invest into something.
Right.
But if you're going to be looking in the area here, always just be cautious. I wouldn't say like go look at one house, love it, and that's it. I would definitely find your, the catalyst home that we always talk about. Explore some other options, compare it, make sure that's the one you want. It's okay to terminate a deal. That's not what I'm trying to say, but if you're going to be throwing darts at a dartboard, you might as well try and be a little bit more accurate. So that's kind of my advice, just like understand what you want, think about it long term, and make a decision effectively, because there's a lot of inventory out there. There's a lot of houses. The only thing that it really like boils down to is like, is this the right one for you? So being able to answer that question effectively and actually understand where we're coming from would probably be the best thing in my opinion. But I feel like that kind of is a blanket statement to most things in real estate.
Yeah, I would also add on to that, just be realistic, right? Like, is it really the right time for you to buy a home?
Yeah.
If, you're scrolling on Zillow for hours a day and you're not necessarily seeing the one that you want, or, in your price range, there's only certain options. Is it really the right time for you to buy a home? Or, can you pivot to doing something to save up more money, lease for another year, or stay with family for 6 months or whatever, to try to save up more money and prepare for this purchase? Because I think that what I'm seeing too is just a lot of people feeling like what they want, like it just doesn't exist, right?
Yes.
Like the expectations of what they're looking for and what is actually out there aren't matching up. And so, like, obviously, like you said, it's okay to be cautious, but let's be realistic, because when the home that you want comes on the market, there's not going to be time for you to sit around and look at 2-3 other options.
Right.
It's going to be like, you need to make your decision right now.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing for buyers too, because they have leverage, but if they don't use it wisely, they're going to miss out on the house, right? They have leverage because they can go look at all these houses, but when the right one, like a listing like yours, right? If a buyer had been looking for a couple months and saw that house pop up, they're like, oh, like, let's think on it, sit on it a little bit. They could have missed out on it, So yeah, it's interesting. Like, obviously, like, be cautious. You have the leverage here, but just do not sit on your hands when the right property comes along, because there's a good chance you're not the only person that's interested in it.
Right. Because, like, if you think about it, when you have 10 houses that have been on the market for, we'll say, 30 a month or so, and then one new house comes up and it's been landscaped and it's been, fully repainted inside, and they've cleaned up and they've, decluttered and staged it as needed. You think all the other people that are looking for a house, out of the 10 that may already be available, there's a reason those have sat on the market. So now they're also looking for the new one.
Yeah.
And if it's priced fairly, they're going to move forward on it because they've already had the time to look at the other options.
Right, yeah.
So I just think also, like, the word leverage can be kind of confusing because it is like, yes, buyers do have leverage, but I feel like it's more in the amount of time that they have to actually look.
Right.
Versus, like, yeah, every home that you look at is going to be fully prepared by the seller, and you're going to get all the closing costs paid for, and you're going to get it at a discount. Like, that's not what we're saying.
Yeah, where's the leverage at? Yes.
Yeah. The leverage is in the amount of time that you have to potentially make a decision and explore your options in comparison to previous years.
So if you're a buyer today and you're kind of overwhelmed with the amount of options you may have in one certain neighborhood, what would be your first course of action? Like, what would you do to start like making sure this is going to be the right house for you?
Yeah. So usually what I tell my clients is, let's take a look at what the options are after we've talked through their criteria and they've explained to me why things are important to them. Send me your top 3 that you are interested in. Let's go look at them. And then out of those top 3, which one did you like the most?
Okay.
Try to identify the catalyst home, like we've talked about in previous episodes, which is the one that makes you think like, yeah, I could see myself moving forward on this.
Yeah.
And then after we identify like that number 1, we have a conversation about like, okay, would this really fit all of your needs, or does it just not feel right? And maybe that has other things that go into it. For example, if you need $10,000 of closing costs covered and you're looking at a home that's 1 year old and the sellers need to sell, it's probably not going to be a great option for what you need, right? Because even though you may like that home and that may be the one that you want to move forward on, it may not make sense because that seller probably doesn't have $10,000 to give you if they bought it a year ago. Like, there's not enough equity for them to give that to you.
Right.
So now we need to like pivot and look at other options based on what you are actually needing.
Yeah, so like not even just understanding your client's perspective, but also like the sellers too, before you try and get into that whole mess of a situation. So yeah, I like that for sure.
Yeah, and that just creates better expectations for everyone, because you don't want to go look at a house and say like, yeah, we can get this when, again, if they need closing costs covered, which most people do, especially first-time home buyers these days, then why even waste our time looking at it?
Right.
Like it's fine for the first day or so we go look at homes, but after that, let's have a conversation about why we don't need to look at these anymore.
Yeah, once you're kind of more on the same page and understanding of where they need to be.
Correct.
Yeah, very cool. I like it.
Correct. So I think that's pretty much all of the advice that I have for anyone in that situation. Is there anything else that you had?
No, I've been really big recently on also understanding the seller's perspective and trying to figure out who they are as we're looking at their property, not in like a creepy stalker way, but like why they price it this way, why are they on the market, like kind of what's going on. That way we can kind of show up better as a united front whenever we go to put in an offer. So I mean, that's kind of the only thing I would add on to what you said, is just being more understanding of where the sellers may be coming from, and maybe y'all can align in some way and help y'all get the property. But I like all of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you got all the way to the end of this episode, if you have any questions or are looking for other resources as you do your research on potentially making a move, our social media links will be in the description below. We would love it if you subscribe to our YouTubes and subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple Music. We definitely appreciate the support, and we will see y'all on the next one.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you found something useful, or at least had a good time listening.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe or share it with someone who might enjoy this content.
And if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover, reach out to us on Instagram. Everything will be linked below for you.